Welcome back to Conscious Consumption. If you are new here, welcome. The episodes come out every third Friday of the month. If you're listening, you can listen on all major platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple, or you can watch on YouTube. And there is a YouTube playlist where you can binge listen to all the episodes. I am your host, Serena Fine. Thank you for joining today. And I have a special guest with me today. I have Jackie Suzanne Rubio. Jackie is a mother who has really been through the trenches of experiencing great pain and grief and all over the loss of her son. And she's here to really bring her story of survival and murder and what she experienced forward, and a way of helping others, helping and providing hope to those that have also been going through the grief and the pain. So I would like to welcome Jackie. Jackie, thank you for joining today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Serena. I really appreciate, having your platform to speak on and just getting to spend some time with you.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have time with you too, Jackie. So Jackie and I are in a class together in one of Lisa's classes. And so I got the pleasure of getting to know you through that way. And just, I remember when I first heard your story, I couldn't even imagine, the pain and the trauma and some of the things that you've experienced. For listeners that aren't familiar with you and your story, could you maybe bring us up to date as far as kind of what the story is around your son, how you lost your son?
Yeah, so I wrote a book and it will be launching, and the book's title is From Murder to Messages. And that is sort of exactly what the story I tell, and what the story that happened to me is. My oldest son, he's an amazing kid. His name was Devin. I spelled it funny, Devyne. I never knew why I would spell it that way when he was little. But it was fun because during the doctor's appointments, if they didn't know that he was a boy, they would always call in Divine.
Aw.
And he used to get so frustrated with me, but now that I feel like he's on the other side, it's nice that I hear like the automatic readers and stuff say Divine when they're talking about his name. But he's 28 years old on August 16th, 2022. He had just turned 28. His birthday is December 2nd. And it was Christmas time. He had been going through a massive custody battle with his ex-wife, and he was getting his ass kicked there for a while. She was, falsifying documents and making things up, and taking his visits away with my grandson, and he was really, really going through it with her. But he's such a methodical guy. He was like 6'4", had really dark hair. He was a super handsome boy. He just didn't know he was. He's one of those kids, like kind of awkward, really shy, kind of standoffish, especially when it came to the ladies. But he was doing everything right, during this custody battle. He was, clearing his name, getting his rights back to, have visitations with his son. And everything had gone so sort of wonky that he decided to file for full custody. And he was really making strides towards it. So I feel like he sort of backed his ex-wife into a corner. I know that she was having some financial difficulties keeping a lawyer retained and going through quite a few lawyers. And, some information was coming out about, things that she was saying that just weren't true. And the things she was telling my grandson to say were sort of coming back to come into the light, sort of to say, like, with the law enforcement and DHS. So Devin was making some serious improvements, going towards getting custody of my grandson. And he was very worried about her accusations and, what she was saying about him. So he was trying to protect himself. And he installed a dash cam on his car so that when he would go pick my grandson up for his visits, he would park in such a manner that it would always see the front door, just so that she couldn't say he was doing anything to her or scaring her, or also sort of to protect himself,
Yeah.
because there had been rumors that she had bought a gun, and he was starting to feel fearful that she would try to use it on him. So this particular day, it was um it was Christmas time. So his his fiance was out Christmas shopping, and we were all making plans about spending time together at Christmas. I was going to go see my grandson. I was talking to his fiance, where am I going to stay? Can I bring my dog? She's just having, the holidays are here. She's excited, happy. We're on the phone together. She's, Christmas shopping, asking me, would Devin like this? Would Devin like that? And um, it didn't dawn on me at the time, but it was the day for him to go pick up my grandson. And um, she wasn't with him. He hadn't been going by himself at all. He was trying to keep himself protected and bring somebody else with him. But I guess, it was time for everybody wanted to shop and holidays. So for whatever reason, Devin went by himself that day to pick up my grandson. And I just wish he would have never done that. But he had the dash cam going, and he parked in the way that he could see, the door, knocked on the door, and she opened the door and opened fire on him. No words spoken, and shot and killed him on video. Um, while my little grandson was in the home. Um, and so that is sort of like what happened to Devin. 28 years old. Devin was such a quirky kid. He's such a good kid too. I mean, one of those like stick in the mud kind of kids. He was so straight laced. He never drank, he never smoked any weed. He went to church all the time, and he paid his taxes, and he cared about his 401k and his credit score. I mean, he just was like, that's just how he was. He just took like one foot in front of the other. He wasn't a real like dramatic kind of kid. And I know that the custody battle, it really kind of took a lot of money from him. So he had to take a second job. He spent his wedding savings. Him and his fiance were supposed to have gotten married. He had proposed to her before all this custody dispute had happened with the ex-wife. And so they had to make that sacrifice. They had to give up their marriage in order to go to court and attain lawyers and things like that. But he came like our home. I talk about this a lot, and I don't talk about this in a manner to put myself down, or that's kind of who I am now. I don't talk about that, but I was a massive alcoholic in our home. I was a completely dysfunctional mom. I was a single mom with 4 kids. I had pretty toxic relationship with the children involved. I definitely had, some pretty severe issues in our household. And Devin was he just never wanted to be part of our family. It was way too chaotic for him. So he would like find mostly like pastors and their wives, or youth pastors and their families, to go, and he would spend a lot of time with them, and he would devote a lot of his time to church and to youth groups and programs like that when he was growing up. So we had just started to connect again. I had just gotten finally like completely sober for the last 2.5 years before he was killed. And with that came like clear mindedness and the ability to really work on my relationship with him. And I felt so drawn to come back to Oregon. I was actually living in Texas at the time, and I owned a home and a piece of property. And I sold it to come back to Oregon because I just felt like I wanted to support him. I didn't want him to walk into that courtroom alone. And he had his fiance and her family, but I wanted him to have his mother. I wanted him to feel like he was supported. Um, because I just had let him down so much as a child. And I know that men get their children ripped from them often in the court systems, and he was just getting completely railroaded. It had disrupted his entire life, and it take his son away from him, So I wanted to contribute financially to his attorney, and I just wanted to be there for him. So I had this strange pull to come and move back to Oregon. And I did that. And I did support him, and I did walk into the courtrooms with him. I did help him with attorney fees, and we were getting closer before he passed. So that's sort of how my story started out. And I was 2.5 months, or 2.5 years sober when I got the call that my son was murdered.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I couldn't even imagine getting that call. How I mean, there must have been so many things that went through your head as far as like just being in even that denial piece. And now, like, how could this be? How could this happen? Can you maybe share a little bit, like, were you already, because you said you felt that pull, so were you already kind of having a little bit of that shift in perspective of like energy shift in perspective as far as being pulled to your son for that area? And do you think that maybe that was kind of like your inner self, your higher self, kind of letting you know that you need to be there for family?
Yeah, I have no other way to describe it now. Now that I know what I know and what had happened, because it didn't financially, especially, it didn't make any sense to give up a place that was like owned outright in an area that I could, excel in and afford to live in and do well in, to come back to a state that's extraordinarily expensive to purchase a home in, to buy. So I ended up 2.5 hours outside of where Devin lived, on property that I now had a mortgage on, which I didn't before. So it really didn't make any sense, but I cannot explain to you just the pull. I mean, just sell everything, leave as quick as I can to get closer to him. And so I definitely think that that was my higher self. And, back the story up a little bit, 2.5 years before that, when I got sober out of a real tragedy. I had I'd been sober, I'd gone to rehab, and I had a relapse, which resulted in burning the home I owned down with myself in it. And um I was considered deceased and resuscitated. So
Wow.
when I came out of that, I was in a coma for 10 days. I was in the burn unit for about 6 weeks. Like 30% burns over my body, third degree skin grafts, the whole 9 yards. And when I came out of that, I was obsessed with near death experiences. I didn't have one, not one that had a memory, not one that I could sit here and articulate to you, where I went for those when I died, or where I was at when I was in the coma. But I came back and I just thought, I want to know what would have happened to me if I didn't make it back.
Yeah.
Where was I? Like, so I got really obsessed with near death experiences. I read a lot of books about, life in between lives and things like that. And I have to say that between the pull to come back to Oregon so strongly, and then this couple years of experiencing, interviews with near death experiences, Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, like Michael Newton's book, Journey of the Souls, and just hearing about past life regressions and where we might go after this, and how similar all the stories were. And people were telling these stories before the internet. I just have to say that in the first few days after Devin was killed, I leaned on that a lot. I swear to you, every interview I'd ever listened to, every line of the books that I read about where we go after we died would come up. I would watch them in my mind. I would read the passages in my mind when I would just be so upset about my son being gone.
Yeah.
Where'd he go? So yeah, I think that my higher self prepared me. I thought that the near death experience research and obsession was because of me, but I honestly think that it was preparing me to be able to have some comfort and something to lean on after Devin died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, so after his passing, did you have any time that went by or any point where you started to kind of feel like he was around, or maybe you had some sort of experience that kind of led you to believe that he was there?
I did. I think I probably started experiencing signs and the knowledge that he was still around right away. But I have such a stubbornness in me, and I was so programmed and have such belief systems to, take to negate that. And I was also so very, very sad and very, very, very hard on myself. I mean, when you raise your children the way that I raised mine, and the guilt and the shame that comes with it, and then you permanently lose one, so you cannot ever make it up to them, you can't ever show them how much you changed or anything like that, it's devastating. And I feel like that blocked me a lot from receiving his signs. But there was definitely a time where, and I write about it in the book. It's a pretty special sign, I think. And it was sort of also where I was at in my journey. It was about maybe 2 months after he was killed, and I temporarily got to have my grandson with me. But we were going to court, and I mean, I was losing. I was getting my ass kicked because the state of Oregon left her parenting rights, and they were obtaining that. They were managing to take him and get him from me. So I was in a really dark place. I was doing my best with him. I never said anything bad about his mom who murdered my son. I never wanted him to feel bad or shame or anything like that. And or about his other grandma that he wanted, that that's who he was going to live with, was his other grandma. And so that's who I was actually in court against, was the mom and the grandma, because the mom kept custody, and she had a right to give him to the grandma, and there was really nothing I was able to do or say about it. But I tried like heck. So we were like outside playing frisbee, and it was just trying to be normal, trying to just make it feel typical. The dogs were, playing around, and he was happy. We were playing frisbee with each other, and all of a sudden the frisbee just went on the top of the roof of this mobile home that we were in. And the mobile home had tires on top of it that were kind of like hold for lightning strikes, because it's a metal roof and a metal trailer. So the frisbee got up there, and I climbed up. I put a ladder up there, and I climbed up to look on top of the roof, and I couldn't find the frisbee anywhere. I wasn't going to actually get on top of the roof, but I did make a huge effort and moved the ladder around and kept looking. And so I just figured like the frisbee must have got lodged inside one of those rubber tires.
Hmm.
So I just remember I came down off of the ladder, and I looked up at the sky, and I said, "Hey, Devin, if you're out there, why don't you get that frisbee down for us?" I don't know what made me say that. And I certainly didn't believe that that could happen. But the next morning, when I went to take my little grandson to school, right in front of the car, like 200 or 300 feet away from the trailer, was the frisbee laying on the ground.
Oh, I love
And
that.
I think like
Yeah.
that was one of the first times when I was like, oh, he might be here. He might. And then that was a really, I think, and I documented that in the book. I actually took a photo of that, and I documented that. It's one of the first earliest signs I got from him. But those signs just kept getting bigger and bigger and coming like, and they still come today, and he's still here today, leading and guiding me. So yeah, that was a really big sign, a really good one. And the first one, I think the first one I acknowledged.
Yeah. And how magical too to just have that comfort of knowing that he was there with you, even though you couldn't maybe see him in the 3D in his human form.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
definitely could not have made it through the human grief of this. I don't think I would have stayed on this planet if it wasn't for him giving me all the signs. And um yeah, there is something magical about that.
Do you have kind of a one that's really strong for you that stands out, that's kind of similar as far as, because I know you've shared with me some of the stuff that you've had pop up in your healing sessions where, he's come through and whatnot. Is there one that kind of stands out more so than the others, that was like one of those really profound signs that it's like,
Well, if we're specifically talking about like when I do a healing, 'cause I am a Reiki master and I do Reiki sessions, and I tend to do a lot for other moms who are grieving. I think that it stands out for me when I go into my meditation and I'm, getting ready to do their healing. Before I even contact them, I sort of connect to them. And Devin will come in, and I'll see him in, sort of floating around in a vision. And he's wearing like a hard hat and a work safety vest, and he's got big old boots on. And I just know that he's saying he's ready to go to work with me. But sometimes he'll actually show up with that mama's child too,
oh,
and he'll bring forward their children and show me that their children are also going to be part of that healing session. And when he does that, that leaves an impression on me, just it's intense, I will say. And it makes me like my heart so happy for the other moms, because now I know that their child is with them. Like, and oftentimes when that happens, they get to feel their child in the Reiki session as well. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to alienate anybody. It's not limited to just someone who's lost a child. There's lots of Reiki sessions I do where he brings in, maybe it's their mom, maybe it's an uncle or another loved one, that he'll show me is also going to be part of that healing session. So those mean a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful. Since you brought it up too, because I was going to actually ask you about it a little bit later, but I'll ask you now since you brought up the Reiki master. So I would love it if you could share a little bit, because I know from class, I obviously know all your beautiful gifts that you have. Jackie is an incredible channeler, a psychic medium. But can you maybe share a little bit about how you got into these offerings, this particular holistic world of helping others, with kind of your journey of healing, and how you went from this extreme grief state into, changing it into something that you could have help others, through what you went through.
Yeah, so I think my inspiration to do Reiki for other people came at about 8 months after Devin had passed. I I don't know why, and things just synchronistically happened, but I found a cruise with a medium named Suzanne Giesman.
Okay.
Now, I didn't have any background about mediums. I don't think I believed in them. I had like people who were psychics or mediums, they wore like tin foil hats and they were all crazy. Or then I also had a touch of like religiousness, and then that meant like they could be, working from the devil. So I didn't have a lot of experience or background, and I certainly didn't have a very positive view of mediums. But boy, when you lose a child, you will be very surprised the amount of searching and how open your mind will get. So I went on this cruise, and I had a roommate, and she was from a support group called Helping Parents Heal. And she did a Reiki session on me. And it was the first time in 8 months that I feel like I actually breathed. I don't know how to explain that, but 8 months of that darkness, of that grief, of that pain, getting ready for trial, also, getting my grandson taken from me in court. There was just not one single good thing that I could hold on to. And so I feel like I took a breath for the first time in 8 months, and I felt some peace and I felt some relief. I just had a reprieve from all the grief and all the darkness. It was, not very long, maybe 30 minutes, but also she and I had a very strange shared experience. I felt a whoosh come down me, and she at the same time felt a whoosh come over her too. And she said she'd never experienced that before either. So I don't know what it was, but I just said, I don't know what this is, but I want to do it. I want to learn it, and I really want to give it to other parents. Just the gift that she gave me by that. So I really set out, even in my grief, to make sure that I started to learn about Reiki, and I started to, incorporate that in my toolbox, in
That's
my
awesome.
own healing and in the healing of others.
And then you also do the quantum healing as well. So that kind of goes hand in hand with your offerings too. Can you maybe speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, and I talk a lot about in the book about this too, was my Reiki journey, and just how the spiritual world and the things that are unseen are not easy to not doubt. Doubt them, doubt, what, because you can't see them. You can't put your hand on them, as far as like a doctor does when they stitch you up after surgery. So I had a hard time doubting, but I was getting this feedback that was just phenomenal, and I didn't understand it. And I had heard people say, gosh, Jackie, it feels like you're like, this feels more than Reiki. I don't know what you're doing, but this feels like a different kind of healing than just Reiki. And then that's when met Lisa in her class, and she started to describe some of what quantum healing feels like and what she sees in a quantum healing. that she does. And I was like, oh my gosh, I see that. I'm doing that, like without even realizing it. So I quickly jumped on the wagon and started to learn her quantum healings and took her first level class of quantum healing.
Okay.
And it's just a progression of Reiki, I feel like. And it's just another healing. It's a powerful healing for sure. And I know that so Reiki is a vibrational healing. It's done with vibration, and quantum is done with light. It's a light healing, so it's much faster and it gets down to the roots of the issue quite quickly, I would say. And it's pretty intense. So I now get to use, a combination of a Reiki healing and quantum healing on my clients, and I'm really grateful for the quantum healings. It it's kind of a big deal. I'll just say that it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I love your offerings. I've had the pleasure of getting to work with you and share and trade, and it's been beautiful. Your journey is so interesting to me, just how everything kind of unfolded and how it kind of pushed you in this direction of, helping others and doing all the holistic modalities and working with that. And I love that you've had Devin come through and step through to, help support you in the role when you're working with others and whatnot. I do have to back up for a minute because unless I missed it, but I was curious when you mentioned the cruise with Suzanne Gizmin, sorry, was that how long ago after that you said that was a couple months after or a few months after?
8 months. It was 8 months after he
Okay.
passed.
And was
Yeah.
that kind of like when you first started noticing kind of the mediumship portion kind of opening for you, or were you already opening up a little bit before that and it kind of cracked it open further?
So I would never say that I had a mediumship portion before that. But what was
Okay.
happening before that was I was hearing his voice a lot, but I was hearing it. I thought I was imagining it, or I was just imagining what he would be saying to me, you know. And I started to just write all that down. And I was in a cloud. I was in grief, and there was just like this haze and this fog around me. I wasn't coherent and with it enough to do like journaling. But when I was so prompted, like again, just compelled, pushed, that when I thought I heard him say something in my mind that he would have said, or I thought I was imagining, I would write it down on anything. If I was in a restaurant and I would cry a lot in restaurants. I don't know, there was something about being in a restaurant alone or having a memory, of him and I in the restaurants. I cried a lot in restaurants in front of people. It was really embarrassing, but I would remember, like, if I heard him say something to me in my mind, even if there was just a napkin in front of me, I'd write it down, and I thought that I was making it up and I thought that it was just a pretend conversation, but it really turned out to be a lot more. Devin, he comes through to me in what we would call automatic writing. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing in the beginning. But at the cruise, when I got to be around other people, other moms, other parents, that also have conversations with their children who have passed, where it was more normalized. I didn't feel like I was a freak or making it up, lying to myself, just to cope type thing. That I would say that's when I really began to allow the what ifs. What if my son is still here?
Yeah.
What if I can communicate with him? What if, those things, instead of just like blocking them off completely,
Mhm.
like that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I was really, really good at getting these amazing, miraculous signs and then gaslighting myself to the point where I didn't believe in them anymore.
Well, and I think what you just said is so important because I think that so many people really shut down their gifts and doubt themselves, and they don't surrender to the process. And that's huge, like what you were just talking about, like surrendering and allowing it in of the what ifs and what am I experiencing, and then kind of observing, being in this role of observing to allow it to flow in more. I think that's beautiful and that's amazing how you've had this kind of step journey through the process of opening up your gifts and how I watch them evolve further because I've been in class with you for a few months now. I think it's been like 6, 7 months now. And it's
Yeah,
been
maybe even more
amazing to
than
watch.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe even
amazing to
more than that.
watch. So, and then I wanted to ask you specifically, um, just through this entire process, because I mean, I just know as a mom, and I'm sure you have been through every emotion in the book. How do you not, how do you not hold on to that anger and allow that to the flow out of you with what happened, with not, with because you said that she's still around, so she didn't go to jail.
No,
Um,
she is in jail.
oh, she is in jail
She
now.
did go
Okay.
to prison, yes.
Okay. So there must have been some point that you kind of worked through the emotions of the anger, because I'm sure there was anger there, right? With what she had done. So how did you allow yourself to grieve and go through those stages without holding on to them and having it hold you back?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give away my book too much, but there is a lot of surprises about her and about past life connections and things like that. So
Oh,
that
interesting.
was like the mystical piece to it. I think, but there's so much aspect to, the human grief and to the forgiveness. And I don't know that I can sit in front of you today and say that I have completely forgiven this woman or her mother, because her mother has taken my grandson and kept him from me. So there is two pieces that I feel that I was extremely wronged. One took my son, human life from this earth, and one took my grandson, who's still alive, that I could get to see him. He looks so much like his daddy. I could get to see his face. I get to see my son in him, and that's been taken from me also. So I think that because of how dark it was for me, and there's two pieces for me. Number one is, like I mentioned before, I'm a massive alcoholic, and being an alcoholic, you cannot held on to anger or bitterness. If you do, those are big triggers for drinking. Those are big triggers for being, doing drugs, whatever it is to break your sobriety with. And so if I were to hold on to that much anger, hatred, and bitterness, I don't know that I could stay sober. And my sobriety is the most important thing to me in the whole entire world, because without my sobriety, I'm not able to do anything for anyone, including my surviving children. So or Devin in spirit, I just want him to see like I'm sober and I can stay sober. So that's a big piece for me of letting go. But also, I was thinking about this during those darkest times, and those months of, just nothing good. Devin, the manner in which he was killed. I go into the book a little bit. I try not to overwhelm my readers, but I do go into a book a little bit about I wasn't able to view his body. I had to, like not even get to say goodbye to him that way because of the amount of shooting that happened to him. And I know that if I just saw one little tiny pretty thing, anything, a little flower coming up out of the ground that was starting to open, it was the only light I had. So I would like really stare at that. I would like really, really put that gratitude of that little piece of, joy that I could get. And I would hold on to that very tightly. And I feel like that is a piece of why I was able to come through this, why I'm able to, get to a place of neutrality with these women who, took my son and my grandson. And so I don't, I'm not in a place where I would ever want to have a relationship or speak to them or hear from them. But I am in a place where I don't dwell on what they've done. I don't dwell on the feelings of anger or bitterness or frustration towards them. It doesn't do any good. All it does is take away my peace, and it takes away my joy of my relationship I have with my son in spirit and my children who are here now. And I have, my youngest son is married and has a darling 5-year-old stepson that is like definitely like a biological son. So I have a grandchild that I'm part of their life. And if I'm so busy hating and replaying and rethinking about all the wrong that they did, I wouldn't be able to show them love. I wouldn't be able to be, the person that leads the family or that helps, bring us together. So I think that that's part of why the forgiveness for me was such a big piece. One, because I felt like it's a matter of life and death, because if I drink again, I think I'll die.
Yeah.
And two, because I think I had to cling to such small pieces of beauty that they became a really big part of my life. And how I was able to sort of overcome the way I feel about the what happened.
Yeah.
And my spiritual life now and the things I sort of know in my own experience and with the communications I have with Devin is he doesn't hate them. He doesn't want me to stay in anger. I mean, he wants me to move forward and to be joyful and the best I can. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be happy when I'm not, because this is a hard thing to go through. And it's, it'll be 3 years coming up December 16th. And his 31st birthday is coming up in 2 days after while we're shooting this. And I mean, it's sad. It can be overwhelming and full of grief, but he's just there so often, and he's just funny and happy where he's at in spirit, and he just wants me to know like this death is not the end. He really pushes that for me. Death is not the end.
Yeah. Which is so beautiful that you were able to come out of this on the other side with the beautiful piece of working through your healing and being able to have these signs, having these beautiful experiences with Devin, and then through that also healing your heart and being able to work through these different emotions that you experience and now doing what you do and offering other people that have gone through grief the same thing. With that, I'm curious, do you have any specific tips for somebody that's maybe listening to this and going through a difficult time, going through the grief, and just really they're not at the point of having that light at the end of the tunnel yet and really need something that's kind of uplifting and that could kind of help guide them in a direction that could help them with their system, specifically maybe their nervous system, but then also with their heart healing.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a couple of moving pieces there. I always will, say that energy work is really important. So Reiki healing, other modalities too, even ones that I don't, I'm not aware of or I'm not certified in. But energy work's really, really important. But it needs to go hand in hand with our human work, with our human grief. So for me, the two most important things I suggest in is energy healing and connection. You have to have that human connection. And we tend to alienate ourselves when we're in grief. I definitely did for a while too, because I don't want to bring down the room. I
Mm.
don't want my grief and my sadness and my pain to get onto other people. So I did sort of kind of withdraw a little bit, but you just can't do it alone. And there are people out there that want to help you. There are people out there that are willing to hold your hand and go through that hell with you. And it could be people that are already in your life and we kind of shut them out. Or there's new people that come into our lives during a time of grief. You'd be surprised, like support groups or, other people who've lost someone that they really, really felt your grief and they understand. So many of us are more than willing to reach back in and to grab you and to help you and to hold your hand. So energy work and in the human connection, I think are the two main things that I recommend at first. And then of course there's other steps that we take, to kind of get through that darkness. But support is a big one.
And speaking of support, if you want to follow, which I highly encourage you to follow Jackie on Facebook, she does have a group called Light After Darkness. And you could reach out to her there. She has beautiful healing modalities on there that she offers. She shares a lot of information that's helpful and supportive. And then she also has a group that she's a part of, a parent grief group that she works with. So I highly recommend checking her out on Facebook. Facebook, can you, besides Light After Darkness, you also have your Instagram. Is that the same name, or do you have your actual name, Jackie Suzanne Rubio, for Instagram?
Um, Instagram would be Jackie Suzanne Healing.
Okay. And then for the parent grief group too, I know that that's a group that you've been involved with for quite some time as well, and you've done some things with them. Can you maybe share a little bit about the parent grief group, and then share a little bit about your Life After Darkness group?
Yes. So the parent grief group, and I do highly recommend anybody who's lost a child. They actually also have a sibling group as well. So if you lost a child or a sibling, you can join this group. It's called Helping Parents Heal. And it is a very encompassing, supportive group. A lot of support groups you go to, they don't allow you to speak on the afterlife. They don't allow you to, talk about that point of it. It's always just about your human grief. Well, Helping Parents Heal go one step further. They provide really good vetted quality resources of people who know about that consciousness survives death. So we're talking, mediums, psychics, but also doctors and chemists and, scientists, quantum physics, things like that, that people who can help us learn about, how our consciousness survives death and do so in a safe manner. I do know that I always try to caution people after they lose someone and they immediately want to try to find mediums or someone spiritual to help them, because there's just so overwhelming amount of information out there, and not everyone is going to, you know, be legitimate. And so the Helping Parents Heal, I think that they've done a fantastic job. They vet all of their mediums, they vet all of their speakers. It's a pretty rigid process you have to go through in order to be qualified for Helping Parents Heal. So I highly recommend them for anyone who is absolutely, searching, seeking, want to know where their child is, where their sibling went after they passed away, and how to connect to them. And it's just also because there's just so many, it's global too. It's not just in the United States, it's global. There's just so many people like-minded that this becomes normal. And instead of being like an outside, like where you think you're making things up and you're being a freak, because you're hearing and you're having dialogue with your child that passed, it's normalized. So you get to like remove that piece of that much doubt. And the more doubt you can remove, the stronger your connection gets. So I highly recommend that. And then, yeah, so my personal Facebook is Jackie Rubio. And so I would suggest, you find me on Facebook. And then I do have the group, Light After Darkness. And it's just a Facebook group that I made for people who do need like extra support. I do free healings on there this time of year, specifically. Holiday times are hard for people in grief, and they can just reach out to me. They can just feel, that there's somebody there that can walk with them, that can hold their hand, that can understand them. And then, yeah, I can offer Reiki sessions. I can offer, intuitive guidance and things like that as well. And I do group healings on there.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Jackie. I just want to remind everyone again. So, the name of the book, we will also have it up on screen, but it's From Murder to Messages. And this is with Jackie Suzanne Rubio. So, be sure to go to Amazon to get Jackie's book, which will be released. It'll be open and available once this is actually launched. So this episode, as soon as it airs and goes live, you'll be able to pick up that book. So I do encourage you to go and order that book. So,
Thank you.
Jackie, I just want to thank you again for coming on here and sharing your story and being so vulnerable, and sharing something that I know you've been on an incredible journey. So thank you so, so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me speak my truth and be authentic with your audience. I know that I wrote the book a lot because in sort of in spiritual circles, you know, I my perception at least was that, you had to be vegan and you had to have lived a squeaky clean life and things like that. And I just really wanted to come on and tell my real story
Mhm.
and show who I was and what my lifestyle was like, and that it didn't stop the signs from coming. It didn't stop my loved one from reaching out to me, and it didn't stop me from being able to be a light and a healer for others.
Yeah, and I do want to also just little caveat, not caveat, just mention there too, because what you just said, I absolutely love that about you, by the way, Jackie, the fact that you're so raw and out there and you don't, you're who you are. And that is so amazing and loving and I love it. But thank you for being who you are and sharing that with the world because like what you just commented on and said, I think there is kind of this certain stigma sometimes in the holistic world of how people are supposed to look or behave or, whatever, when really it comes down to being your authentic, true self and being able to share your story in a way that others could also relate and, it's reachable for them too. So I love that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for acknowledging that, because I do think that's an important piece of my story, and I just don't pretend to be who I'm not. And I don't want anyone else to feel like they have to pretend to be somebody they're not in order to receive love and help and guidance from the other side.
Yep. Yep. I love it. So thank you, all you listeners. And I will see you guys next time on Conscious Consumption.